Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mach.
Hello, fantasy fiction fans and fantasy creatives everywhere. This week I'm chatting with Boston-born literary scholar and writer Annie Mydla. Annie's work is with the Writers' Resource site, which is called Winning Writers. And her job combines editorial, administrative, and marketing aspects of the operation there at Winning Writers. And as a contest judge for the North Street Book Prize, she has had the privilege of evaluating over 5,500 self-published books since 2016. But without further ado, let's go over to, I think it's Poland, but we'll find out in a second, Annie Mydla.
Yeah, I'm here in Poland, and my name is Mydla because I'm married to a Polish man here in Silesia.
Oh, okay. So yeah. Silesia, where is that? Is that South Poland?
Yes, it's the southern part. I guess it's about 90 minutes west of Krakow.
Yeah. I've been to that area. I went down to the area which is a skiing resort.
Oh yeah, probably down near Szczyrk or Bielsko-Biała, or maybe in the Tatras.
Yeah, it was the High Tatras. And I remember there was a church there which was, I think it might be a cathedral made completely of timber.
Absolutely yes, amazing. They have these wooden churches down here. Yeah, it's amazing. And they can be really old, like from the 1500s even.
Yeah, this one was that I went to see. It's absolutely amazing. I love Krakow. You say Krakow? Is that the correct way to say?
I think they say Kraków, but I don't have a very good Polish accent. I studied quite different from English, so it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. So you were born in Boston, Massachusetts, weren't you?
Exactly, yeah. And I grew up in Rhode Island, and I went to Western Mass, and now I'm here in Poland.
Are you there permanently, Annie?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because, I mean, maybe you know some Polish people because it sounds like you may be in England or another part of the UK.
Yeah. So I live between London and Windsor Castle on the River Thames. Yeah, so I've got a lot of Polish friends.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really like about Poland is that people really, really love living here. Like the people who stay, they stay because they absolutely love it in a lot of cases. And I had the luck to marry a man who just really likes it. And through him, I've just come to really like enjoy this area. And I just don't think I would want to leave.
Wow.
I just had this moment last week where I was just like, this is horrible. I'm never leaving here. Like, it's a great place to be out here. And it's awful to think of people being displaced right now. But, fortunately, Poland is really able to help out with the refugee situation. So that feels good too.
Yeah, Poland's doing a really good job. So your man, was he born in America as well?
No, he's Polish. He's from here.
From Poland, yeah. So we'll probably talk a bit more about Poland later on because we're going to touch on Joseph Conrad.
Yeah.
But before you came on the hour, I was telling people about the things you do, like Winning Writers Resource site and the North Street Book Prize. So let's talk about those to start with. So tell us about the Winning Writers Resource site. What is that?
This is a free writers resource site. It's been around by 2001, and it was founded by Adam Cohen and Jendi Ryder, who still run it today. So it really started out as like a newsletter to writers with a lot of free resources. And then it kind of evolved into a website, and they started to run contests pretty early on. And the contests that they run have kind of evolved over the years. And now we have 4 main ones, which we can talk about a little bit later. But so basically they both have really deep connections in the writing community, and Winning Writers has come to kind of stand for the writing contest for like both average people, but also, people who are professional writers and kind of testing out content. through our contests. And, it's like this kind of open door where we're open to the more professional established people, but also people who are getting started and have a lot of talent to show.
Yeah. And why is it a resource center? What resources does it offer?
Well, we're frequented by people at the beginning of their careers.
Yeah.
So at the most basic level, it's just, how do I write? What do I do? What are literary devices? How do I format a manuscript? We also have a lot of people who are self-publishers. And while they have the writing part of it down, they need help on the technical aspects like formatting. They also need insight on how to maybe reach out to agents and publishers if they want to pursue the traditional publishing route, or if they're going self-publishing, we have a lot of resources about how do I do that? How do I actually get my book onto Amazon? How do I get a cover for my book?
Yeah.
And how do I get an ISBN? How do I navigate the tax aspect of it? I mean, we really are a one-stop shop when it comes to traditional publishing, but also self-publishing.
Are you finding that it's much busier at the moment?
Absolutely. That's a great observation. We've had so many entries from people who started writing in lockdown, and we've had a lot of great COVID-related entries, obviously. But it's really been a blessing that people have had this time to reflect. We have a lot of new memoirists, for example, who are viewing their past experiences through the lens of this new challenge of COVID. So yeah, I mean, it's a horrible situation. A pandemic is never a good thing, but I think a lot of people have, found their voices during this time. And I really hope, Winning Writers is doing what we can to make sure that people can stay connected to their passion even after they have to go back to work.
That's good. And how did you get involved with Winning Writers then?
Well, it's a very small organization and it's a very personal organization. And I met Dendy and Adam in 2015 because I was their next door neighbor.
Oh, right. How perfect.
And they needed a reader for the North Street Book Prize. And they heard about me. And so we got together and that was, it's history.
Okay. And you've been a judge for the North Street Book Prize. Is that a prize that is organised by the Winning Writers?
Exactly. Yeah. This is the 8th year of the North Street Book Prize, and I've been with them since the 2nd year. So I've read over 5,000 self-published books for the North Street Book Prize. And when I say read, I really mean read.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And it's just a wonderful privilege. It really changed my life. I can't imagine not being in contact with these authors and their work. It's just informed my life view. I think a lot of people get discouraged from entering writing contests because they don't believe that their book is actually going to be read. But in this case, that's not the truth. This is the high point of my entire year. So anybody out there who's listening, please submit your book. I'm looking forward to it personally.
Well, that's very nice to hear. So let's try and work up the numbers here. So that's 5,500 over 3 years, is it? Are we saying?
3 years? No, it's closer to 7 years.
Oh, okay. So you have to read over 1,000 books in a year, which is pretty impressive. Even Goodreads people don't have 1,000 books to read, do they?
No, it feels like fate. I have always been a very fast reader and I have good memory retention. So this seems like the ideal job for me in so many ways. And I'm also just very personally fulfilled by, reading these genres that we have in the North Prize.
How long is the that season? I'll take it it's a season of.
We start accepting entries on February 15th of each year, and the deadline is June 30th. But after that, there are a few months where we're still reading. I have to turn in my final list around the middle of October.
Right.
So, but basically, starting in February, this is my life.
So 5 months. Yeah. So how many books a week are you reading then?
A lot. It really depends on, at this time of year, not too many because our entries really start to build up steam toward the middle of June.
Okay.
And also I do share the reading duties with another reader called Sarah Halper, who's been with the organization for I think this is the second year or maybe the third year. And before that, there was another reader too named Lauren Singer. So it's not just all me, but
Okay.
I get up in the morning and I basically start reading, and I do have other things that I do for winning writers as well, like some marketing and administrative things. And I also write these book critiques now for that service. But, I will basically sit there and I read them on a cycle. So I'll be reading the beginning of one and the middle of another and the end of another,
All
kind
right.
of at different points throughout the day. And yeah,
So you
just
can
kind of,
keep your palette refreshed by having
yeah,
3 books on the go. I like that.
yeah.
And people will be fascinated to hear this because it's very interesting. As you're going along, are you making notes? Are you making judgments even then?
Yeah,
How
have
does that?
to.
Is
Yeah,
there a
because
form that you fill in, or is there a particular way of doing it, like criteria that you're
I do it
thinking
in a
of?
notebook for the
Yeah.
earlier rounds. And, some I read it all the way through and I think this isn't going to continue. So maybe I'll just write a note or two about why it didn't, why it didn't move on.
Yeah.
At the most, like, fundamental, right in the early rounds, we're really looking at very fundamental things such as, are there chronic spelling and punctuation problems in the book? Is the book formatted for reader enjoyment? Because, I say self-published, I mean self-published. They have to be available to readers in some form. So, I mean, these aren't manuscripts that we're judging. These
No.
are books that
These
are
are
available.
the actual stuff which has come to market.
Yeah. So a big part of that is, does it look like a real book? Does it look like something that people would want to spend $10, $15 on Amazon?
Does it function as a book?
Does it function as a book?
Yeah.
Is it attractive? So, if the answers to that are no, like, I read it, but it's, if it doesn't go on, I have to write down like a little bit about why. And then in the later rounds, my descriptions get a little bit more detailed. And then when I finally submit my part of the shortlist to the head judges, it's generally like, a pretty solid summary of my advocacy for this book. By the time the books get to that stage, the chances are I'm passionately involved with them. I really want them to succeed. So I do try to build up quite a argument any way I can for the ones that I really believe in.
Do you ever have to read a book twice? Has that ever happened where you think, actually, I need to read this again?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, there are these different rounds. So the ones that kind of slip away at the beginning, I don't read them again. But the ones that advance, I don't end up reading like the whole thing again, but I do look through them again, like
Right.
2 or 3 more times, because at the end it gets quite competitive. So, the judging at that point gets pretty detailed in terms of the strengths and weaknesses of each entry.
So your remarks and your rooting for these people, that gets sent to a panel, is it?
Yes, we have 2 lead judges on the North Street Book Prize. Their names are Jendi Ryder, who's one of the founders of the organization, and Ellen Lafleche, who is also a published author, just like Jendi is. And they are the ones who kind of, debate between themselves about the merits of the top 40, top 50, and make the final choices. But I'm really happy because in recent years, they've started including my observations in their final critiques of the winners.
Right.
So, and I'm really happy because one of my observations was included in the summary for the grand prize winner, which is called Inheriting Our Names by C. Vargas McPherson. This was our top winner for 2001.
Thank you.
And the author, kind of wrote to the organization, or no, I mean, what she did is she made like an Instagram post and included my feedback in it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels really good because, you read a book, you root for it so hard, you end up thinking about it at odd times of the day and night for months. The insight that you have into this book, such as my insight could be just as a reader, ended up being, really like resonating with the author herself. And I mean, to me, that's really what this contest is about. It's about, us intensely reading and really like trying to get to the heart of what these books are and really getting to the center of the author's intention and just giving that like intense focus that these books really, really deserve.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that, because that gives the whole thing credibility And it makes me excited about actually. I've never entered a competition, but
Oh, wow.
although I want to, but that gets me excited about it. So once you finish your part, it then goes to these judges. Do they then read the book as well?
Yeah, of course. And they debate quite hotly.
So
And
your book, so a person who submitted a book is going to have it read at minimum, 3 times?
yeah, I mean, like, I read my book, Sarah reads her books. We
Yeah,
don't like
okay.
share books,
No.
but Jendi and Ellen, they split up the books. And
They split them
then
up.
for the ones that are particularly good, they like also read them. So
Yeah.
yeah, the top entries are going to be read minimum of 3 times. I think all the books will be read at least twice. And yeah, I mean, I come home to the United States about once a year. And I usually come home in the fall after I've submitted my shortlist. And I always make it a point to visit Jendi and Adam in the town where we used to live in Massachusetts. And at that time, I'm able to, sit across the table from Jendi and be like, okay, what are your thoughts? And they are always, it's just wonderful to get their impressions and also to hear about Ellen's impressions and about like the fierce debates that they have sometimes about these entries. And I mean, it's very, very informative for me as a reader because I am able to make more informed choices based on the judges' preferences. But, the judges' preferences can vary quite a bit. So, yeah, I mean, it just makes an opportunity for a wider range of genres and styles to be successful in this contest. You don't want all judges to have the same preferences in a contest like this.
The reading public don't all have the same feelings, do they?
Point.
I suppose it would be important to ask you what the best tips you can give people who are thinking of submitting their book to a prize like yourself. The first thing that strikes me from just what you're saying is that if you didn't know as an author what your intention of the book is, and some people don't, some people still, even after writing the book, don't know what the theme of their book is. I take it that's going to be almost a lost cause before they've started, really.
This is the mysterious thing about writing. I can't tell you how many times, because I do these manuscript critiques as well.
Yeah.
And the manuscript critiques that we get, or that I get, because I'm the only one who does the critiques for like the full length manuscripts, most of them are not finished books. Most of them are not already self-published. They're not already published. They're in this raw form. And so many times the author says, like, because they're allowed to submit specific questions about topics that they're particularly looking to get feedback on.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times people write and say, well, I'm still kind of developing my themes. I'm developing, they don't have this kind of really strong sense of direction within the book yet. Yeah. And I look at this book and I'm like, oh my God, because it can contain these incredibly strong and timely and important messages. Sometimes people are just too close to the project. I mean, if you have successfully executed self-publishing, chances are you've been working on your book for months or even years, and it's so close to you. It's like in your soul. It's like trying to look at your own child and say, okay, what's this person really about? It's impossible. So like, yeah, it can be really helpful to get another perspective on it. And we offer that through these critiques. But it's very funny. I've never been asked this question before, but I'm reflecting, and I don't often get the sense that any book like submitted to the contest really lacks direction. I mean, like the people who submit to this contest, they submit because they're writers. They're writers, and like traditional publishing, it's not really an indicator whether somebody's a writer or not. Like the people who submit to this contest, they've put in the time. They really have, they've spent money. They've circulated their book to beta readers. They've hired editors. They've hired like line editors. And when they submit their book, like it's not just some kind of amateur production mostly. Like, I mean, we do get a few entries every year that really could be tuned up on a number of levels, but by and large, like the entrant to the North Street Book Prize is very high quality. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy reading these books. Yeah.
Well, that's very positive. Thank you for that. That's really, really a positive note. Thank you. How did you get into that? I mean, how did you become a kind of judger? I can't, because it's not really judging, is it? But it's assessing.
I'm officially described on the website as an administrative assistant judge, and book critiquer. So I think those are like my three
Okay.
roles. And I mean, I told you I was just living next to Adam and Jendi, and my roommate was babysitting their son, and they said we need a judge for the North Street Book Prize. And my roommate says, "Oh, my roommate really likes to read, and she loves Joseph Conrad." And they said, "Okay, let's meet her."
Okay. That sounds very nice, and you're putting yourself down a bit, because I just don't believe that you could pick up a pen and judge 1,000 books.
Importantly, when I started, our entry numbers were not as high as they are now. So
Okay.
I was really just me and the other judge, we would split it, and we would end up with about 200, 250 books a year. And the numbers have steadily been increasing since then.
Okay.
So, I did have some time to kind of get my feet under me. But yeah, I mean, the more experience reading you have, the more pleasant it gets, the more absorbing it gets, and the more you're able to see the overarching trends between books.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, it's all because of Adam and Jendi. They really had faith in me. They kind of saw some potential, and they made the investment to keep me on for all this time. And now I hope that I'm doing the best I can to occupy the role in the way that's best for the writers who enter the contest.
Well, thank you. Do you have a degree in literature yourself?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in English literature.
And did you get that in Harvard?
No, I got it through the University of Massachusetts
Uh-huh.
university system. But, for a few years now, one of the reasons I came to Poland in the first place is because I love Joseph Conrad. And of course, Joseph Conrad was a Polish man and lived in England for his adult life, but had his roots here in Poland. And I came here in 2016 to participate in a literary conference because I had learned that you don't have to be a graduate student or a really credentialed scholar in order to participate in international scholarship for any author. So I came to this literary conference, and I met a lot of wonderful Conradians. I met my husband at this conference, which turned out to be a wonderful thing. And one of the reasons I love living here and why I will never leave is because Poland is really the international gateway to Conrad scholarship. So yeah, I mean, it's a very specific interest, but, working on Conrad, I think, has also given me this kind of view into academic criticism, which I participate in as a hobbyist, but you can participate. If there are any other listeners who have this kind of quasi-academic and critical interest in literature, just know, you don't have to be in academia. You can be an independent scholar and go to almost any literary conference that you want with low fees and really participate in scholarship on a professional basis.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I suppose we better quickly discuss Conrad before we go back to the prizes again. So I have to admit to you, and I'm embarrassed to say, probably ashamed, that I've not read The Inheritors. Mm-hmm. I've read Heart of Darkness. I think more or less everybody in English school system has read Heart of Darkness because it's mainly on the required reading list. But tell us about The Inheritors, because as far as I understand, that is his fantasy fiction. Is that right?
Yes. And it's a really interesting story. At this point in Conrad's life, he was in his late 30s, early 40s, and he had just started publishing in his late 30s when he was about 38. And he was still learning about English, written English. And he basically had two sources of English, which were like really serious novels like Dickens and Shakespeare, and also the Bible. These were his main sources of written exposure. And he had also been a sailor for many years, and so he had sailors English. And it was kind of this ultra high register and ultra low register that wasn't really ideally suited for the kind of magazine publication that was very typical back then. So Joseph Conrad ended up renting a house with his new wife from a writer and social butterfly named Ford Madox Ford. Yeah. You may recognize this name. He was
Pre-Raphaelite.
If you know Ford Madox Brown.
Uh-huh.
So he was this pre-Raphaelite painter, and Ford Madox Ford was his grandson.
Right.
So he ended up renting a house from Ford Madox Ford, and Ford Madox Ford thought to himself, oh, hey, here's somebody I can collaborate with. So the two authors ended up working together. like working with Ford Madox Ford allowed Conrad to explore this really important middle register in literature that helped him to bridge this gap between the formality of like Shakespeare and the Bible and this really casual sailor's English. And they wrote 3 books together. The one that they worked on the most together was called Romance. And that was kind of like this like sailing adventure book with a lot of swashbuckling. The Inheritors is very different. And as you pointed out, it's this wonderful speculative fiction book. It's debated how much Conrad actually had to do with this book, but like technically, because, you know, he was a lot older than Ford Madox Ford. And I think they kind of mentored each other, but Conrad by 1901 had already published like Heart of Darkness and Lord Jim, which were, you know, pretty popular. So I think he also saw himself as a bit more advanced in certain ways. Anyways, beyond that, like he did have some kind of informative influence on this book, but I don't think he actually wrote a lot of the prose himself. And also this book was really influenced by H.G. Wells, who both of these guys knew socially. And they both were very inspired by H.G. Wells throughout their careers. And I think The Inheritors is one of the most like obvious examples because Conrad doesn't have very much other speculative material. But for anybody who's interested in this kind of writing, it's the story of like this kind of failed writer who meets this totally amazing woman who says that she's from the 4th dimension. And her and her other friends who call themselves 4th dimensionists say they're going to take over the world and they're going to instill values of like efficiency and materialism on this aging like post-Victorian society. And then they do it. And the poor like failed writer narrator is really sad because he fell in love with this woman and she kind of used him and kicked him to the curb. So there's a great speculative element. There's a great like kind of unrequited romance. It's a satire of society at that point. And because it's pre-World War I, it also has a lot of kind of predictive elements for things that would be happening over the next few decades, which I believe all good speculative fiction should have.
Wow. Thank you very much. It's already on my shopping basket, but that's going to be bought tonight now because I'm going to definitely.
An hour could have passed just now. I'm sorry. When I get started on Conrad, I tend to really go on.
Wow, it's brilliant. And you, is it true that you wrote an index or you compiled an index on the supernatural language that Conrad has used over his career? Is that right?
Yes, it's still in progress. It's very, very slow going. There's so much material to go through. And I think it may be one of these, just one of these projects that's never really finished, but it's very fulfilling to me while it's in progress. So I'll be happy to say a few words about it. But Conrad, he often used the words like spectral, phantom, ghost, apparition, and he used them for a huge range of functions in his fiction. For example, they can be applied to living people, to certain ideas like cultural or religious, or just, you know, day-to-day ideas that characters are having. They can be part of physical descriptions of the natural environment, like both on land and the sea, buildings and forests and rivers and oceans. And it's also closely linked to social and political ideas. So for example, there's this really wonderful book that Conrad wrote. It was his final full novel. It was written in the early 1920s before his death. It's called The Rover, and it's about the aftermath of the French Revolution on this small French village who has seen a lot of bloodshed and now has to kind of go back to their natural, you know, farming lives, but knowing that there are these very bloody criminals like among them who have kind of you know, receded back into society post-revolution. And there's this young woman named Arlette who's this very spectral and ghost-like character, and she kind of represents this choking off of life in the face of this horror and depravity of this, you know, really sudden and dramatic period in French history. You know, her kind of rehabilitation and coming back to life is really one of the central aspects of the story. And it's very, very moving. I highly recommend The Rover. It's one of my favorite Conrad books. And of course, just to finish up, some critics see Conrad's focus on ghosts as a result of his Polish upbringing and his exposure to Polish literary romanticism, because during the partitions, oh my God, I'm sorry for your listeners. I can really just go on. But during the partitions, Poland, of course, did not exist. It was occupied by different countries.
Yeah.
And so a very popular technique among literary romanticists of Poland at that time was to compare Poland to a ghost that only existed kind of as this concept, as this idea, as this spirit, but which still had a very, very definite and meaningful presence in people's personal lives and also the political lives of nations.
Perfect. It does 100% suit this podcast, because that is the kind of thing we talk about all the time. What we try to do when we're evaluating myth and magic is to understand why we are, as readers and writers, drawn to fantasy, and sometimes it's because we need to for our own health, really, but also because that's where we come from. We actually come from fantasy. We spend 8 hours asleep in a fantasy world. A lot of our upbringing, especially when we're children, is in fantasy. It is part of our makeup. And I think the more fantasy and the more creativity you have inside yourself, the better an author you become. And Conrad is a perfect example of that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So on your LinkedIn profile, I noticed that you are described as an administrative assistant, which you've mentioned before, and a contest judge. So what's the difference between a contest judge and a contest administrator?
Well, there's a big difference. And thank you very much for mentioning that. It's not such a big difference with the North Street Book Prize because the contest is not anonymous. So, like, for example, before I actually start reading the books to judge, I also have a role of going through the books to see if they are eligible.
Yeah.
Or if they have some kind of like problems which we need to resolve before judging them, and also to see if we need to refund any of the entries. We end up refunding hundreds of entries every year because if there are issues that are not able to be resolved. So that's where the administrative role comes in. For all of the 4 contests, I'm the person who goes through entries, and if there's a problem, I reach out to the author and resolve the problem. If the problem can't be resolved and it's a fee-paying contest, then we give the refund as a matter of course. And in the anonymous contests, which are the other 3 contests that we have, the North Street Book Prize it's not anonymous because these books are already published.
Of course.
But for the poetry, like the humor poetry contest that we do early in the year, fiction and essay contest that we do around this time of the year, and also our serious poetry contest, which is later in the year, we ask that all entrants submit their documents without any identifying information on it. And in that situation, the administrator sees, who the entrant is, what work that they have submitted to a particular contest, and is able to reach out to them at any point and say, hey, here's where your work is at. Like, we need a correction on this and this, or can you please remove your name from the document or something like that. But the judges do not see the names. The judges see only the work. And this is just to increase maximum, just get close to maximum fairness, because we do have some previous winners who enter, and we don't like to kind of, have those be distinguished from other entries at any time during the judging.
So it's a level playing field. If I'm entering the competition against Stephen King, you don't know whether it's me or Stephen King.
Yeah, no, unless Stephen King decides to suddenly self-publish books and enters the North Street Book Prize. You would know who he was. But yeah, in the other 3 contests, no. Like, for example, if Stephen King is entering our humor poetry contest, no, we won't know it's him.
So there's a price for the admission, which we've discussed just then, and that's to me very interesting. I did not know that you get your money back if there's mistakes or something can't be fixed.
Absolutely.
So what kind of mistakes? Obviously, all the listeners are sitting there on the headphones saying, "Well, what sort of mistake would get my money back?" So what's the things which would reject that straight away? Is there a short list, or is it huge?
Oh, it's pretty limited number of things that can go wrong. First of all, for the North Street Book Prize, if the book is not self-published yet, then we must give a refund, because we only consider books that are already available to the public. And the reason for this is because if a book wins, we like to be able to give our subscribers and followers a link to where they can buy the book. And if the book is not self-published, we cannot do that. So yes, that's one thing. Another thing is if it's in a genre that we do not accept. Every year we get a certain number of self-help books. We don't accept self-help and self-development books into the contest. and we are not able to accept what we would describe as hard biography or hard nonfiction. And the difference between self-help, hard biography, and hard nonfiction and something like creative nonfiction is with creative nonfiction, it's highly literary, and we don't feel that we need to fact check to the extent that we need to fact check those other three genres.
Yeah.
And our team is quite small. And so we don't have the manpower, unfortunately, to do all that fact checking. And this is why we do not accept these three particular genres. So for any books that we get in those genres, we just refund them and we say, you're welcome to enter in one of our eligible categories, but we cannot accept this book this year. And other than that, there are very few situations in the North Street Book Prize where we wouldn't be able to accept a book. It's really all about genre and whether the book is self-published.
I suppose it's the old piece of advice, which is read the instructions, which you always say if people are thinking about submitting to an agent or a publisher, why not read about what they actually want rather than just squeeze it through the letterbox?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what does a submitter get for that money then? So they paid the price of admission. What do they get for that?
Yeah. Well, maybe I should mention the price of admission because
if you want to, I don't know if you're going to or not, but if you can, that'd be great for my people.
Well, I will, because we're very proud of our price of admission. It's $70 United States, and this is actually on the low end of the spectrum for full-length book contests. Like some competitors that we would have would be like the Writer's Digest contest, which is a very high quality contest, but it's a bit more expensive. It's from $110 to $125, depending on when you enter during the year. And then you can get as high as like the Benjamin Franklin Awards are actually $229 this year. So I'm not disparaging these contests. They also offer close attention to each book entered, and they also offer high prizes. But at the same time, we really try to just orient our entire organization to keeping access more open to writers. And this is why we charge $70 rather than a higher amount. And we are able to keep our fees low because we have high entry rates. So basically, the more people who enter, the lower the fees we can charge overall. And also our prizes are very, very high compared to other contests. For example, this year, our grand prize winner will win $8,000, which is one of the highest prizes offered out there for self-published books. So yeah, we're very proud of this aspect.
Oh, cool. And what about a person who doesn't win the $8,000 prize? Is there some kind of critique? Would that come as a written report or something?
Well, not all entrants get critiques. Only the winners get critiques. We have the $8,000 grand prize. We have 7 $1,000 first prizes, and we also have 7 $250 honorable mentions. And all of these do receive a critique, and we also publish excerpts of the books on the website. But what you do get with the $70 entry fee, no matter what result, no matter what rank your book achieves in this contest, is a large range of free products from our co-sponsors. And these products are for all entrants, and they basically consist of really nice resources for self-publishers and anybody who is thinking of tackling this this kind of daunting process of marketing your own book. So for example, one of our sponsors is called Self-Publishing Made Simple, and Self-Publishing Made Simple offers a course called the Self-Publishing Mastermind, which takes participants through basically every step from like starting to write to self-publishing to marketing. And usually this course costs hundreds of dollars, but anybody who enters the North Street Book Prize gets 1 month of free membership with no strings attached. So, there's no need to submit your credit card info. Like, you can just enter the North Street Book Prize and you can make the decision to, opt into this free membership of the Self-Publishing Mastermind. You also get 3 months free to Book Award Pro, which is a service that connects authors with award opportunities specifically tailored to their book. And this is a great service because, there are a lot of contests, there's a lot of call for submissions, there's a lot of publications out there. And Book Award Pro kind of does all that work for you and just connects you to the options that are really suited for your book and your book alone. And then there's also a range of PDFs. Like there's a book called How to Get Great Book Reviews Frugally and Ethically by our marketing expert, Carolyn Howard Johnson. And there are books by book launchers and C.S. Lakin at the Self-Publisher about planning and writing a book, and also like secrets for better sales on Amazon. And finally, you get a bunch of free guides to successful publishing from BookBaby, who is one of our oldest co-sponsors. So yeah, I mean, you enter for $70, but the Self-Publishing Mastermind course and Book Award Pro are worth hundreds of dollars just by themselves. So you definitely don't come away empty-handed as an entrant to the North Street Book Prize.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Thank you for explaining that. I obviously live in England, and there's lots of listeners who are all over the place. Australia and Canada seems to be a lot of my listeners. Are they allowed to enter your North Street Book Prize?
Absolutely, yeah, totally
Cool.
international. The main consideration is whether the book is written in English. We are only equipped to judge English language books. But other than that, it just has to belong to one of our genre categories, and it has to be already available to the public in some form.
That's wonderful. Thank you. It's given me a lot of confidence in submitting a book for a literary prize. And I think some of the things that have discouraged me, and I'll be quite honest about this because I think it's important that we share this kind of information, is that there are people out there who will scam you. But certainly when I first started as a self-published author, I felt like I was swimming in the sea surrounded by sharks and they're all trying to take a bite of me. There's lots of questionable agencies, and there's people who use book contests as marketing gimmicks. But it doesn't sound like you're doing that. How would you convince somebody like me who's never submitted a book before to a contest to maybe take the plunge?
Well, let me maybe just address this issue of scams first.
Please.
This is a plague on the writing community, and there are a lot of unscrupulous people who are just too ready to take advantage of authors. However, thankfully, there is a large and very zealous group of people out there who are dedicated to calling out these organizations and making sure that everybody knows who they are. And on our website, winningwriters.com, there's a section called Scam Busting, where we talk about contest calls for submissions, agency and publisher scams, and we basically name names, and we also link to a host of organizations where their only raison d'etre is exposing predatory groups. So if you're concerned about scams, please do check out our scam busting section. We are also very zealous about this because people like this kind of ruin it for the rest of us to a certain extent, and kind of destroy the enjoyment of a lot of authors who could be participating a lot more if they felt safe. And now on to the second part of the question about what should be said to somebody who's maybe discouraged from entering a competition. First of all, I want to say, if you're happy not entering a competition, that's great. You don't have to enter competitions. If you like to write and self-publish, that's a wonderful, it's a wonderful part of life to be a creator and to be happy with what you're doing. And you don't necessarily need to, get in some kind of competitive situation with that. You can enjoy it for its own sake, and that's great. On the other hand, if at heart you really would like to enter, but you're there are specific reasons why you're discouraged from doing so, then I say we should look at the reasons. One cause might be that you would be afraid of getting taken advantage of, like we were just saying, or maybe even with a real, established contest, you might be afraid of paying what feels like a high fee and worrying that your work is just going to be dismissed without fair consideration. And that's also a very valid fear. But I have kind of 3 recommendations that might show you that you can enter contests and feel confident. First of all, you can find free contests to enter. There are a lot of free contests. There are also calls for submissions to journals, which are usually free. They don't really offer prizes, but they offer publication. And these opportunities are especially frequent for shorter works like poetry and short stories and essays. And we at winningwriters.com, we have a big database that we call the best free literary contest database with what we consider to be the best options out there. There's newer publications, established publications, publications for authors who are just getting started, but what they have in common is they're all free. And this database is free. So anybody who's interested in free contests, you can come to winningwriters.com and check them out there. I would also advocate maybe considering a smaller competition. I know it can be really tempting to enter like the Writer's Digest competition or the North Street Book Prize, for example, because our prizes are high and we have a good reputation as an organization. On the other hand, some authors, what they really want is a sense of community, and they really want to talk about their work, and they want editors who have the time and the resources to respond to every entry and stuff. So for this, I would recommend finding smaller competitions and smaller organizations who are possibly themselves just getting off the ground. So for example, I recently learned about a new publication called Periphery Magazine, which is a new online journal. And they say that they are welcoming submissions from LGBTQ plus people and people of color and women. And they're open to entries from all over the world. It's free to submit. And they're also looking for people who can volunteer administratively to help them kind of get established. So this is really a community effort, but at the same time, it's really an opportunity for actual publication on the internet. You know, these people they have their social media, they have all their contacts who like look at the site every day and look for what's new on the site. And it's a legitimate opportunity for writers. So I do say it may be prudent to watch a new publication for a couple of cycles to make sure that everything's operating the way it should be.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worthwhile for any author who prioritizes a high likelihood of acceptance and also a high sense of community and communication to develop a list of these smaller organizations and show your work to them on a regular basis, because I think a lot of people enter these contests and they really want to just connect, that's really important. So that is a good opportunity if that's your thing. Finally, you can throw your hat in the ring and go with a larger organization that's highly recommended and has a very long track record and has a record of personal engagement with the writer community. Winning Writers is a good opportunity for people who want to go that route. Like I said, we guarantee no silent rejections. So no matter which of our contests you enter, your work is going to be seen. And if there's some kind of eligibility or formatting problem, if we can't open the file or something like that, we'll get in touch with you. If the error cannot be fixed, then we'll offer a full refund. And you email the organization, you're probably going to get a reply back from either the president and CEO, Adam, or myself.
Wow.
So, we're really reachable, we're really accessible. And another thing is, you want to ask yourself, is this contest that I'm looking at allied with other reputable organizations? Like, are they a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors, for example? Are they looked on favorably by contest watchdogs like Writer's Digest, Duotrope, Readsy? Duotrope is actually our co-sponsor for the North Street Book Prize. We're listed as one of Readsy's top contests for 2020. And also we have been listed in the top 101 contests for 101 websites for writers by Writer's Digest in years past. So you want to find a place that's quite well established, just to feel like you're getting the attention that you really deserve as a writer.
Oh, thank you, Annie. It's been really refreshing listening to you. It's made me understand the whole business better. I have a lot of confidence in Winning Writers. I've got a load of confidence in you as the appraiser and the judges. Great. Where should listeners go first if they want to follow Winning Writers and use your resources?
Well, winningwriters.com is a great place. And the URL is pretty simple. It's just winningwriters, all one word, .com. And from there, you can find our Instagram. You can find our Twitter, which is updated multiple times a day with the contest opportunities that are on our radar, and also a lot of articles and other resources for writers. There's a lot, like the Twitter posts a lot of kind of compilation articles like, top 40 speculative fiction deadlines in 2022 and stuff like that. So people who are interested in that could could follow the Twitter profitably. Oh yeah, and also, I don't know if any listeners are on Reddit, but we have a dedicated subreddit called r/literary contests. So if readers go to reddit.com/r/literary contests, there are new posts every day about upcoming deadlines, usually between 2 and 10 weeks away, I would say. And I'm the moderator of this.
Wow.
This is kind of like my baby, my social media baby. And we have over 10,000 subscribers right now. So I'm very proud of it. So I definitely encourage people who are just, used to just having a list of upcoming deadlines in front of them. This is a great resource for that too. But you can find all of the links to all of these things at winningwriters.com.
Wonderful. Do you find time at all to do any writing, or are you just constantly administrating and reading?
Well, I started out on the academic side of things, but the more of these book critiques I do, the more inspired I'm getting.
All right.
So the other day I dug up this short story that I wrote in 2014, just thinking to myself how I can edit it. And I'm giving myself all the same advice I give to these other writers. So it's a great experience to be on the other side of it. And I was just emailing with Jendi the other day about what about my life in Poland I would want to be writing about. There's a lot of wonderful visual and just sensory things about living in Poland that are very different from where I came from, and really just visually beautiful. There are wonderful textures. There's wonderful post-industrial and industrial landscape, especially here in Silesia. And I'm really starting to feel this creative urge. So I'm hoping that within the next year or so, I myself can join our entrants in entering a lot of these contests and calls for submissions.
Brilliant. Is there any place that people can follow just you, because you're an interesting person to follow? Have you got your own social presence?
No, I'm too busy reading.
Too
I can't
busy.
do all this stuff. I'm just reading all day. I'm reading and writing. But, if you go on winningwriters.com, you can see my bio. And if you want to get in touch, you can email me through the website. I think my email is in my bio. But thank you for asking that, because I really need to kind of improve my social media presence. I just need to find the space in my life to do that.
Yeah, no, I can see that you're very, very busy. Thank you for spending this time talking to us. I know how important it is, that time management for you.
Well, I just want to emphasize to people, unfortunately, while I'm doing the reading and doing the judging, sometimes I get the impression that the people submitting books don't really like what they're doing. And, that's a shame, because to me, writing is the one area in our lives, especially in these really difficult and complicated times, where we can just kind of have it like we want it. It's like, we have this little world where we are the ruler, and we can, make the choices and include the things that are compelling to us and feed our souls. And we can find the people out there who kind of are on this same bandwidth. If I get a book and I know that somebody loved that writing and loved that process, I feel it.
Wow,
and if I get a book and I know, this person is right, sometimes I feel this anxiety from the manuscripts.
Yeah.
Where the person is like, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Do I need to just, a little more action in the beginning? First 10 pages need to grab you, kind of stress. And I know that this book was the product of something different.
It's like Impressionism, isn't it? Those Impressionists, they used to slap a paintbrush and twang it at the canvas.
Yeah. What I want to say is, if you're doing it, make it so that it's for you and that you enjoy it and that it feeds you. And don't worry about me. I'm doing good. I want to read your book, and I want to read the book that you most wanted to write. This is my message.
That's a fantastic way to finish. Thank you very, very much, Annie. Good luck with all of your judging. Good luck with everything. And thanks for everything you're doing to help the authoring community. Wonderful to speak to you today.
Have a wonderful time.
Have a lovely rest of your evening.
You too.
Bye.